I always say to people that out of, I think it's about 300 songs that John and I wrote together, we never had a dry session. We'd always come in and we never went away from the session going, couldn't get it today. We always finished a song, which is pretty remarkable.
Relationship. In particular, how they approached songwriting.
We normally approach it on the M1.
And sort of come up, turn past London, and when we get to Scarborough, we feel we're there, as they say.
Well, I guess I asked for it.
No, we just got a very informal approach. We've got no formula at all, you know, for writing songs. We just do it as it happens. Sometimes John can write a line of a song, he can come up and say...
Things like that.
He could say that. He could just say that. He could just say that to me, and I could say, "No, John." And
often I disagree with Paul and say, "Which has been done so many times, it's killed it."
But then sometimes, you know, we have a real row, and I say, "Listen here, John. I don't think that's right." But it depends, you know. Sometimes there's a line that he does, and then I do a line. Or sometimes John can write a whole song.
Ah.
Yes, oh, he's a wonder when he gets going. Sometimes I can even do that.
I've been influenced since the day I was born with music. You know, I was born in 1942. Nice year. Very good year for babies. And... you know, I just figured that, like, I listened to the Billy Cotton Band show and I dug it, you know. Nothing wrong with old Billy as far as I was concerned, you know.
No.
And I listened to Paul Whiteman via my dad, you know. I listened to my dad. Used to play Chicago, Stairway to Paradise, you know. So I naturally have all those kind of influences, you know. So personally, you know, I've never got round to kind of thinking, well, that was a dumb period, and now is a good period. You know, I like it all. Well, it's a bad thing.
There's lots that I really thought were pretty good, and there was ones which I thought were sensational. To try and put them into, you know, quickly to say which ones I really enjoyed. I enjoyed things like Strawberry Fields. I enjoyed the ones which were inventive, which were new. You know, like, I enjoyed Norwegian Wood because I felt where it was coming from. I remember, you know...
How far do you feel?
Because if you're thinking of putting Ringo on at a later date, we should have some kind of track. A rock and roll thing. I got a guitar when I was early teens. And I learned a couple of chords. I learned a G and a G7, C and an F. And using those chords, I made up this little song called I Lost My Little Girl. People asked me whether it was about losing my mother at that early age, which I don't know. Psychiatrists might have a field day with that. But I certainly didn't think it was at the time. How did we end it?
Going to be good.
That was it? That's it, that's as good as it gets.
How far do you feel that your individual talents are dependent upon each other? I mean, are you sort of Gilbert and Sullivan or Rodgers and Hammerstein? Do you need to work together as composers?
No, not really, but it helps a lot.
Just on the old maxim of two minds are better than one?
Yeah.
You get another point of view as well.
The thing is, because we can do them on our own, but often one of us will just do a song and there'll be, say, one verse in it that's very bad or something, and it's very corny, and if I've written it, then I'll sort of take it along and sing it to John. And he'll say, that verse is terrible and that verse is corny. Come in, Mrs. Higgins.
Because you still get so involved in something, you finish it, if you're on your own, you haven't got the energy to go over it and sort of see, you know, if it really makes exactly what you want. So if you sing it over to each other, even if it's a finished song, you know, with almost the arrangement, it's still sort of, yes, that's fine.
Your milk, John.
Thank you, Mrs. Higgins.
Oh, thank you.
Writing. I mean, writing 10 songs in a week, as I believe you did, we mentioned it earlier, for the Walls and Bridges album, that seems to me to be an awful lot of pressure. How exactly do you go about writing, John, these days, or both of you, in fact, as a combination? Which of those two is the more important?
looking back at it, whenever I comment about writing, I always seem to have been suffering, whether it was writing Day in the Life or whatever. It's some kind of suffering, so I always seem to have an intense time writing and thinking this is the end and nothing's coming and this is dumb and this is no good and all that business. So not writing for the 5 years, which I didn't pick up a guitar.
It was Mr. Higgins.
I woke up and I had the melody to a song yesterday in my brain. And I didn't have any words, so I called it Scrambled Eggs. Scrambled Eggs, oh my baby, how I love you. I think the difference between me and a lot of people is they often dream about music, but they don't remember it. But for some reason, this melody just kept going round and round my brain, so I was near a piano, so I kind of remembered it and blocked out some chords. A couple of months later, I put some words to it. Yesterday.
I think that's silly, but I think the first solo should be double as long. You just play the piano.
It's getting technical. Well, I mean, I'll play. We can do something. We'll do the guitar or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Twice as long solo. 2 verses for the solo.
Yeah.
Oh God, he's getting bossy now. Is he like this at home?
Yeah.
Producer Foreman. Okay. I had no love since you.
Mr. Higgins.
Oh yes, do you consider that do you consider you think alike, or that you think differently and therefore help each other?
We think nearly alike, but pretty differently at the same time. But I mean, you know, we can write a song, say like Day Tripper, where we've got to write one, and at the same time be the same writing it. You know, we can write it thinking the same thing about it. But if we each wrote it individually, it'd be a completely different song.
Yeah. Well, there's a
song that John had started, and he kind of had the first verse. And this often happened. One of us would have a little bit of an idea, and instead of sitting down and sweating it, we just bring it to the other one and kind of finish it together, because you could ping pong. You know, you get an idea, and he get an idea, and oh, that's good. You know. And so I say he had the first verse. I read the news today, oh boy, and we sat in my music room in London and just started playing around with it, got a second verse, and then we got to what was going to lead into the middle, and we kind of looked at each other and kind of knew we were being a little bit kind of edgy, and we sort of said, I'd love to turn you. It worked. And then we put another section I had, woke up, fell out of bed, tried to comb across my head. So I had that section, so we put that in, and then finished the song up, and then did a big sort of epic recording of it with a big full orchestra and everything, you know, and then did that crescendo thing in the middle of it with the orchestra, which was an idea I'd had because I've been talking to people and reading about sort of avant-garde music, kind of atonal stuff, crazy ideas. And I came up with this idea. I said to the orchestra, you should start, all of you, which they're all looking at me puzzled. We've got a real symphony orchestra in London who are used to playing, you know, Beethoven. And here's me, so this crazy guy out of a group. And I'm saying, all you got to do is everyone start on the lowest note that your instrument could play and work your way up to the highest at your own pace. Just if you want to go, that's fine. Or, you know, that was too puzzling for them. And they're all looking at me. And orchestras don't like that kind of thing. They like it written down, and they like to know exactly what they're supposed to do. So George Martin, the producer, realized that. He kept the random aspect, but he said to the people, you should be about this note at this point in the song, and then you should have got to this note and this note. And he left the random thing. So that's why it sounds like a... I'm tempted to stick drums on it, but...
Just piss Ringo off.
Piss Ringo off, just to piss him off. What were you watching?
I played the guitar on the intro too on my old Epiphone, which is like the first sort of electric rock and roll guitar I got, first serious one anyway. Then we wanted to do a Beach Boy type thing with the paperback.
business. And then it comes in with that, and then little bass thing I discovered on that session. Around about that time, I'd been presented with one by Mr. Rickenbacker, a Rickenbacker bass. And when we were out in LA, the fella came from the factory, sort of gave me it, you know. So that became a new recording bass. It recorded a bit better.
You'd be able to do that much better. But I can sort of do the boom,
Specifically for people, did you write Wait for Frankie Vaughan?
No. We weren't thinking of Frankie at the time. But no, we used to write in the early days when we had more time to write for other people. We seem to be. We wrote, that's the only time
we wrote one
for
Helen
people.
Shapiro and Kenny Lynch did it.
Yes.
We wrote one for Cliff and we did it. And Billy J and those days were the only ones we really wrote for people.
John and I, at that time we were writing pretty much everything together. We wrote Love Me Do in the parlour of my house in Liverpool, my dad's house, of 24th Road, which is now a National Trust house. I saw it standing there. It was another front parlour job. John and I would get off school, not always with the permission of the teachers, and we'd go there, because my dad would work. So that meant the house was free, he was out at work. John's house wasn't free, his auntie would be in there, so we couldn't go there. So it had to be an empty house, you know, for us to do this devilish work. This is the original thing from Abbey Road. Oh. You know, from Because the World is Round, You Turn Me On. You know that song? Because the world is round. But that's the actual instrument, you know, that we did, and great. And what happened is, you know, these record companies, they're rationalising, and the bosses say, you've got to get rid of this to the studio guys, and they ring me up at panic. I've got to get rid of it. I said, okay, I'll buy it. And, so it all comes here, you know, they're home. But it's great, you know, it's fabulous stuff.
I thought it was a normal cembalo. I didn't know it was one of those.
No, this is the actual one-off from Abbey Road, off that section. I had it as a bit of a song, and I ran it past John, and we changed one line and then finished it up. I mean, you know, you don't think too hard about rhymes at that point in your life. You know, if it rhymes, it works. And so she was just 17, she'd never been a beauty queen. And it bothered me a lot, and I said, this isn't going to work. So we put our heads together. We just came up with You Know What I Mean. She was just 17, You Know What I Mean. We said, ooh, ooh, ooh. It gives the audience room to think. You know, as a beauty queen, just closes it down and you go, no, immediately. So that became one of those, You Know What I Mean.
For a long time. What sort of mental discipline did it involve resisting picking up a guitar?
Well, it wasn't a matter of resisting. The first half a year or a year, I had this sort of feeling in the back of my mind that I ought to. And I'd go through periods of panic because I was not in the NME or the Billboard or being seen at Studio 54 with Mick and Bianca. I mean, I didn't exist anymore. I got a little fear of that would come, like a paranoia, and then it would go away because I'd be involved with the baby or involved with whatever other business that we were involved with. But that only lasted about 9 months, and then there was suddenly like it just went away. And I realized there was a life after death, you know, I mean, there was a life without.
Let me take you down, was I going to?
It must be difficult coming up with ideas because Eleanor Rigby was another unusual idea. With Eleanor Rigby, it was the name that I was looking for. It was at the piano I started off doing that one. I started off, I think, on an E minor chord, just vamping, jum, 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 like the record starts out. And then while I was doing that, I got this da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, that goes against the E minor chord. And as I was doing that tune, there were these words, picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Those are the words that arrived. Then the rest of it was work to try and explain what those words were. And so I knew it was going to be a lonely old lady type song. There's a lot of imagery. Keeps her face in a jar by the door, you know. someone going around churches and the vicar and all of that. There's a lot of stories suggested by that. But I didn't have a name, and I happened to be in Bristol at one time, and I had some time to kill, and I was walking around Bristol on my own, and I saw a shop, Rigby's, and I just thought, yeah, that's it, that's it.
Yeah, another beer, Klaus. You're mocking. You know what? It's great when there's kids crying in the street. Little children, and mummy, and I go, no, wait.
Not getting clear signals. And after 10 or 15, almost 20 years of being under contract and having to produce two albums a year in the early days and a single every 3 months, regardless of what the hell else you were doing, or what your family life was like, what your personal life was like, nothing counted. You just had to get those songs out. Now, Paul and I turned out a lot of songs those days, and it was easier because it was the beginning of our relationship and career. Paul and I developed in public, as it were. We had a little rehearsal in private, but mainly we developed our abilities in public. But then it got to be format, and sort of not the pleasure that it was, and that's when I felt that I'd lost myself. Not that I was on purposely being a hypocrite or a phony, but it took something away from what I set out to do. I started out to do rock and roll because I absolutely liked doing it. So that's why I ended up doing a track like Starting Over.
You sound like Fats Domino again. You sound like Fats Domino again.
Is the Come Together song, which is your vocal, and is it in fact you wrote the song as well?
Yes.
I've heard whispers that it will be the next American single.
No, if anything, it might be the B-side. I think we probably put Something out as a single out there. I think that's about the best track on the album, actually, George's track. And they had it, you know how they always get our records before they're out over there somehow. We've got a spy in England who sends them the tapes.
Right.
And they were playing something so much, they had an advance thing of it. They're red hot for it over there, so we'll probably release it over there as a single. I don't know what will happen here.
Now, the Come Together side is a fairly different song as far as the group's concerned.
The Come Together track?
Yeah,
I don't know how that happened, you know. I mean, I think it's pretty funky, you know. I'm biased because it's my song. I dig it, you know. And it just happened well, you know. It's a nice funky sound on it.
What was the
really cool electric guitars, but this one I like the sound of it. It's got a crazy sound. To When I'm 64, so the nice tongue-in-cheekness came later with the 60s, which I think was a kind of lent it a little bit of sophistication. It was, you know, will you still need me, feed me? And Michelle, the same thing, the words, but the melodies, yeah, I did have When I was 64 for messing around on my dad's piano, and Michelle from sitting around enigmatically at art school parties, hoping to pull birds by singing in cod French. Yeah, when I got the guitar, I learned 3 chords. One of them was G, which is it's very simple form. It's just one finger. And you move it down a bit and you get a G7. It's almost a chord. It was good enough for me. And then there was a C. And F, actually, 4 chords. Wow, amazing. I wrote a thing called I Lost My Little Girl, which was my first song ever. I woke up late this morning. My head was in a whirl. Only then I realised I'd lost my little girl. Her clothes were not expensive. Her hair didn't always curl. You know, you've got to start something.
Well, I think all the time, so, I mean, it's the same. I actually don't put it on paper so much these days. But, I mean, it goes into songs, a lot of the same energy that went into those poems. But I don't know what I actually do with the thoughts, but they come out either on film or on paper or on tape. I've just got lots of tape, which I suppose if I put onto paper, it'd be a book. But it's just a matter of, do I want to make those tapes into paper, or make the tapes into records.
Does it feel the same to you when you're writing something on paper and when you're writing a song lyric?
It does now. In the old days, I used to think if songwriting was this, you know, and I love you and you love me, and my writing was something else, you know, even if I didn't think of it quite like that. But then I just realised through Dylan and other people, Bob Dylan, not Thomas, and that it is the same thing, you know. That's what I didn't realise, being so naive, that you know, you don't write pop songs and then you do that and then you do that. That everything you do is the same thing.
That's funny because that's exactly what George or John would have played, you know?
Yeah. It's all we know for a song like this.
When we got to America, the first question was, well, who does the words? Who does the music? You know, because everyone had always seen words by music. He said, well, I don't know, he does them someday. I do them the other day. You know, it depends, really. I'll do the music and we'll swap. And so they used to say, what's your formula for hits? We said, well, you know, we hope we never find one. The other thing is we said we'd bottle it. But, you know, it was, you know, life, it's much more grey than black and white. With John and I think we were a great team. We enjoyed working with each other. I think that's a great secret. We used to do 3-hour sessions normally. I'd go to his house or he'd come to mine. We'd sit down for about 3 hours. One of us would normally have a bit of an idea. I'd just arrived at his house out in Weybridge. He'd be getting up. That'd be the signal for him to get up, you know, have a quick coffee and then we'd be into the thing. I just got out the car and had a driver on this. I think I'd been done for speeding, so I had a driver on this occasion. I almost just drive myself. And I was chatting to him, as you do. And I said, what have you been doing? I've been working hard. I've been working 8 days a week. Oh, yeah. And then went in, so John said, right, what are we doing? I said, a song called 8 Days a Week. Oh, good title, yeah. And so we just, you know, and we wrote it. And it only ever took us...
track is the next one, The Off Garden, which reminded me, for some reason, of the Yellow Submarine cartoon film.
Yeah, well, I think it's the bubble, you know, and the fact that it's under the sea bit.
I suppose it is, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any other connection.
No, except it's about the bottom of the sea, you know, and getting away from it all.
And this is, in fact, the only song that Ringo wrote.
Yeah, well, it'll be a few years before his production is going as fast as ours. It took George a few years.
Like that, John would tell me the minute there was anything he didn't like, and I would tell him. And we had a good ability to not annoy each other. I don't know, we were just lucky that we respected each other enough. And I think we realised that we were trying to do something together. Right. We were two smart guys, so I could tell what he was thinking, he could tell what I was thinking. And you know, as it went on, I would write, it's getting better all the time, and he would write, couldn't get much worse. You know, so that'd be great, okay, now where do we go from there? So I'd write the next line. So we just spin off each other, you know.
I don't know, around 1962 or something, I don't know. I mean, if you give me the albums, I can tell you exactly who wrote what, you know, and which line. I mean, we sometimes wrote together and sometimes didn't, but all our best work, apart from the early days, like I Want to Hold Your Hand, we wrote together and things like that. We wrote apart always, you know. Even Liverpool, One After 909 on the What's It LP is one I wrote when 17 or 18 in Liverpool, separately from Paul, and some of his, I don't know, The Sun Is Fading Away and things like that. The things Paul wrote those days. We always wrote separately, but we wrote together because we enjoyed it a lot sometimes, and also because they'd say, well, you're going to make an album, we'd get together and knock off a few songs, you know. Just like
But what makes you sit down and write a piece of honky-tonk rock or a melodic ballad?
It's just whatever I feel like at that particular moment, you know. I can sit down and just I mean, this is the way songwriters do it, you know, no matter what anyone tells you. You sit down and you hit a chord, or you hit a sequence of chords, and if they happen to be if you happen to be hitting them slow, augmented type chords, you know, then you'll probably write a ballad. If you happen to sit down and plonk out little kind of blues riff, then you'll write a blues thing, you know. And that's all I do, you know. I just sit down and whatever kind of thing comes out, and then I use it if I think it's good. So, I mean, I can't really answer for the fact that it might be kind of influenced by 19...
But sometimes I'll write lyrics to a song first, and then I'll get the same feeling as Khaki Hargreaves or a poem, and then write the music to it after. So then it's a poem sung. But sometimes the tune comes, and then you just put suitable words to fit the tune. If the tune's doodle-doodle-doodle, and you have shagaboo-doo-cha, you know, you have sound words.
Like any other painters, any other writers, anything, you know, as I say. As far as I know, I really know nothing about it. Like anyone who writes a song, you don't really know much about it. I'll tell you a little story, Dave. I was in Jamaica recently, filming there was Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, filming a film called Papillon, you know, soon to be released.
Incredible.
It should be good. And we went round to Dustin Hoffman's one evening, you know, he invited us round. Went around there, and we got to know him a little bit, and we were sitting around a few days later with him, and he was saying, talking about songs, you know, talking about just this kind of thing. Where do you get them from? You know, I was saying, well, you really kind of pull them out of the air, pretty much. You know, they just kind of come to you and stuff. You don't think too much about it. If they come great, they come great. If they come lousy, they come lousy. You know. And he was saying, well, it'd be interesting. He was saying, you know, so you could virtually pull it out about anything kind of. So he pulled out a copy of something like Newsweek or Time, you know, one of these kind of papers. And he said, this is something turned me on, you know, which is kind of the last words Picasso said. And he read them out to me, and we've got a little tape of this at home, you know, he had a little tape running as we were doing it. I had my guitar there, I was strumming away. And he said, this is what he said. He said, drink to me, drink to my health. You know I can't drink anymore. It turns out he couldn't drink. He's an old bloke, you know. The doctor advised him not to drink. So I got these words together, and I said, drink to me, drink to my health. You know I can't drink anymore. Drink to me. And Dustin's flipping his nut, you know. He's going, yeah, man, yeah, baby, this is a soul number. Yeah, all right, you know. And he's rocking away. So, I mean, there's an example of kind of how it happens, you know. It just comes out the air, you know, you just kind of do it with the people you're with, and it just comes. Then you lay it down, and if people like it, they like it, you know. As far as I'm concerned, it's just an echo of what happened at that.
I do, and I'm saving all my loving just for you.
Now the journey's over.
Well, maybe I wouldn't face it because I knew I could always force something. You know.
Did you think people would know the difference?
Oh, I mean, people...
Or didn't you care?
No, I don't worry about people. I mean, I do worry about people. Part of me does, okay? So I'm not, you know, I'm not saying I'm immune to criticism, or I don't want to be liked or nothing like that. But when I'm creating, the creating is the joy. The song coming and, oh my God, you know, what's this doing? You know, it's writing itself. It's like I'm watching somebody else doing it. God, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I use Nowhere Man as an example simply because I remember I struggled all morning, about 6 hours to write a song like the day I wrote Nowhere Man in 1964 sometime. And I finally gave up. We've all experienced this on different levels. I lay down on the couch, I was really depressed. Can't write a song. And as I lay down exhausted like that, because I was no longer centered on this, I have to write a song, I just lay down. You know, I picked up the guitar and the whole damn thing was there. Well,
Cynthia had divorced, and I felt a bit sorry for their son, who was now a little bit, you know, a child of a divorce. I was driving out to see the son and Cynthia one day, and I was thinking about the boy whose name is Julian Lennon. And I started this idea, hey Jules, don't make it bad, it's going to be okay. You know, it was like a reassurance song. So that was the idea that I got driving out to see them. I saw them, and then I came back and worked on the song some more. But I liked the name Jude. I didn't realize it meant Jewish, which it does. Actually, I nearly got into trouble because we put it up on a window of our shop. We had a little shop because we were into fashion, would you believe, for a while. On the shop window we put, "Hey Jude," so that people going by on the buses would see, "What's that?" You know, intriguing. And then it was our record. Well, I got this furious phone call from this guy, Mr. Lennon, who was Jewish. And he said, "What are you doing? How dare you do this?" And so on. "Hey, Jude," because in Hitler's day, in the Nazi thing, Juden raus meant Jews out. So, and I didn't connect. I actually heard the name first in one of the musicals, but I liked the name. Anyway, he rings me up and he's furious. "Why are you doing this? You know, making fun of the Jews. We got enough." I said, no, wait a minute. I swear to you, it's nothing like that. He said, "I'm going to send my son around to beat you up." I said, "Hey, baby, let's cool it down. Nothing to do with that." I said, "You'll hear when you hear the record. It's just a name in a song, and it's all cool." But, of course, I suddenly was alerted to the fact that it would have caused him a lot of problems because his family will have experienced that, firsthand probably. Anyway, I calmed him down, and he was cool. And his son didn't come around to beat me up. Whenever I do a new tour, I think, well, I'll just switch up all the songs. But then I go, I've got to do Hey Jude, because it is such fun. And it's great handing that over to the audience, And you know what? The greatest thing is you feel this sense of community. And in these times when it's a little dark and people are sort of separated by politics and stuff, it's so fantastic just to see them all come together singing the end of Hey Jude. So I'm very happy about that. So I keep it in the show.
Time, when you didn't have to have a passport to go from country to country. It used to be you could go around, What is this game that somehow this is America and then just across the field is Canada, and that you have to have all kinds of papers and pictures and stamps and passports, and the concept of imagining no countries, imagining no religion, not imagining no God, although you're entitled to do that too. Imagining no denominations, imagining that we revere Jesus Christ, Mohammed, Krishna, Milarepa equally. We don't have to worship either one, that we don't have to, but imagine there's no Catholic Protestant, no Jew Christian, that we allow it all, freedom of religion for real.
Baby, don't you let your dog bite me.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. And I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12, way down the line. But I expressed it differently all through my life. It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time, but now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane. But I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it. I mean, don't you agree?
I do.
It's insane, it's not just a bit strange, it's just insane.
And that's the
And nobody knows, all these people in the street, and half the people watching this are going to be saying, "Oh, what's he saying? What's he saying?" That you are being run by people who are insane, and you don't know.
The real world is so insane.